This is the Criterion Creeps podcast, and tonight we're talking about The Horse's Mouth from 1958, directed by Ronald Neame. The tagline for the film, RJ.
Oh no.
Smart Alec, sheer madness and all Guinness. The man's a genius.
What does that fucking mean? Why are they talking about Alec Guinness in their poster?
Because he's the star.
He's smart. Alec.
Guinness sounds like genius. Gully Jimson is a boorish, aging artist recently released from prison. A swindler in search of his next art project, he hunkers down in the penthouse of would-be patrons, the Beaters, while they go on an extended vacation. He paints a mural on their wall, pawns their valuables, and, along with the sculptor Abel, inadvertently smashes a large hole in their floor. Jimson's next project is an even larger wall in an abandoned church.
That's a pretty good description, Jarrett.
It's like that's one
That's
of the
the whole thing.
It's one of the better ones, honestly.
Yeah, that's the whole meatball there.
Kitten caboodle.
Kitten and noodle.
Yeah. So RJ, our good friend comedy is back.
Which kind of comedy? Are we talking
Criterion comedies?
Fishing with John comedy, or are we talking like what was How to Get Ahead in Advertising comedy?
Ooh.
Which kind of comedy are we talking here?
Goddamn. Somewhere
in between.
In between, and maybe maybe below.
Well, I mean, Fishing with John, it has been the best movie we've watched so far. So somewhere in the middle is literally in the middle of our 150 movies. Like, you go on. Tell me more about whatever you're talking about.
Okay. Well, as we talked about, when it comes to comedy is like, I feel like the most subjective of film stuff, because it's like it's either going to work for you or not, and it's pretty straight down the middle. This movie is kind of a mixed bag for me. I'd never seen this movie before, and I kept kind of noticing that there was people who were like kind of saying like, oh, I've only watched this because it was in the Criterion Collection, and this is a weird film of like all of these like kind of like 1950s 60s like British films. Why is this one in the Criterion Collection? It's just like an odd one. I mean, it's the only film that Alec Guinness ever wrote.
He wrote this thing?
Yeah, he wrote this.
Weird.
So he wrote this. It's based on a novel. It's like a loose trilogy, I guess. I don't think even the books have much to do with one another, though. But this is like the most noteworthy of this trilogy of books, because it actually has a Wikipedia entry, if that gives you actual legitimacy. But so Alec Guinness here, he's like kind of always been known to be like a man who he's like the Gary Oldman of his time, if you will. Like
Alec Guinness?
Yeah, like where it's like he's like the chameleon. Like he kind of like falls into these roles and he kind of blurs in, and you're like, I can't believe it. And he plays multiple characters. He's kind of like a Peter Sellers too. He was also a Gary Oldman of his time. I'm just going to keep saying that.
Smart Alec.
Yeah, smart Alec. Sheer madness. And so here, Alec Guinness, I don't know what the context really was of like how he was perceived. In this character of Jimson is kind of like going against his character type. Because if you watch like Bridge on the River Kwai, he's like this upright citizen. And
is that a future creep?
No, that is not in the That is not in the collection proper. But a damn fine piece of filmmaking that one should watch. So here he plays a curmudgeon man, grumbly, kind of walking with a limp, schlubbing around in life, playing the the artist. And this is always like a weird genre to watch. Having my background in art history and having met a great deal of artists in a Midwestern world, like where it's like not the high end world, you meet a lot of artist types, and you get in a sense of like they're just plain folk that make stuff, and sometimes they kind of bring on some extra baggage to make themselves more interesting. This is kind of like more of the classic cinematic kind of flourished version of an artist, where they're very dramatic and self-destructive and stuff like that. I was like thinking about, there's a Nick Nolte story where it's like he plays a painter, and it's Martin Scorsese. It's New York Stories, it's a short story anthology thing. Martin Scorsese does a story in there, and Nick Nolte plays like the deranged Jackson Pollock kind of painter who's got like painting block. He just can't get his next one out, and a woman's involved, etc., etc. And then he finally gets things figured out. It's kind of like a trope. Most are actual artist types kind of like roll their eyes at these depictions of artists in this particular type of way. And I don't know. It's fine. Like it doesn't bother me so much. I'm used to it. Nothing gets better than like A Bucket of Blood, the Roger Corman film, as far as like depictions of like artists, I guess, and like just how stupid it all is. Much better than something like Velvet Buzzkill, which can go die in a fire.
Excuse me, could you elaborate on that?
Velvet Buzzkill. What did I ever say? I don't even know. That movie sucks.
Doesn't matter.
Netflix. Anyway, so Alec Guinness. It opens up with him getting out of jail, as the synopsis says, and a young man, Nosy, who I found out the actor who plays Nosy, Mike Morgan, he died of meningitis shortly after this movie was shot.
Oh,
and so he's dubbed. So he's like totally dubbed in this. Yeah, because he wasn't around to do those lines.
Just his voice is dubbed, right? Like they didn't get a completely different actor to act in half of the scenes, and then you didn't realize that it was a different actor for two different separate actors for the whole movie.
RJ, when did you notice that Nosy was played by two different people?
What I would like to say is that shut up. It doesn't matter. Other people had the same opinion as me. Other people didn't know either, so it's not like a weird thing, man.
Yeah. So Nosy shows up, rides up on his bicycle, and he wants to be an artist, and Jimson's like, no, you don't, and he steals his bike and goes back to his like boathouse, where he's like keeping all his scummy paintings, these gigantic canvases he's somehow working on in this dark boathouse. And he's making like obscene phone calls, threatening phone calls to a patron of his, which actually we should do more with our Patreon. We should make more like threatening phone calls about getting more money.
It could be a Patreon goal, actually. If we get enough patrons, we can start doing prank phone calls to people, like the Jerky Boys. Oh. Do you remember the Jerky Boys, Jarrett?
Yeah, I don't know.
Or did you mean threatening phone calls?
Threatening.
Well, that's not really different from what we do already.
Yeah. So he calls his patron up, and this movie, whatever.
Why don't you tell me what you really think about
whatever?
This movie?
I feel like whatever about this movie. It's fine. It's like this thing that just exists. It just fleets about. It's like every one of these like kind of like middling British comedies that like I'm sure somebody thinks is like hysterical, and there's like parts you're like, oh yeah, I see that, that's a joke, and then for the most part though, it just kind of rambles on. This is some peak British 50s filmmaking, and it's very like there. It doesn't help that the copy of this that like I came across is like real gray and washed out, and like the frame rate's stuttery.
Mine also.
Yeah, and so it doesn't really help with the enjoyment of the film. And there definitely came a point where like I was kind of like okay with this movie and being like, oh, this is fine. And then it just kept going, and it almost restarts again, because what happens is it's all this setup of him threatening a bunch of people and everyone kind of dealing with his bullshit. And then he starts doing the mural, and he starts getting all these like people so he can paint their feet. Yeah, and it's like, okay, and then you know that when the squares, the beaters come back to see that the mural he's painted and all the damage they've done, they're gonna go, what? And their hat's gonna pop off and spin in the air, and then they're gonna kick their feet up like a cartoon. And that kind of happens, and then you're like, okay, well then what now? And then the movie continues on for like another like 35 minutes, and you're like, wait a minute, like that's some serious structural problems, because then it's like, oh, we're just gonna go do that again, but like, oh hey, that guy we saw before, he's dead. And now the thing's been donated. Well, let's go check it out at the Tate. And it's like, oh, hey, there's this old abandoned church. Let's paint it an even bigger mural. And then all the community loves it. And then he brings it down himself, and everyone goes, ha, ha, ha. And he sails down the river on his boat. Another thing about artist movies is sometimes you see the art that's being made by this particular artist.
Yeah, I would like to get your opinion on that because I found striking similarities to the art of a JFD, a Jarrett Francois Duncan.
Indeed. Wow. No, it's just kind of like, I don't know. This is not my type of painting.
Is it a little too thick for you? A little too chunky?
I don't know, because I can't remember. I looked it up. There's an actual painter who was making this stuff. It wasn't some hand. It was like a professional painter, and this was their thing that they were doing, I guess, at the window of time. It's like this figurative kind of like Basquiat looking stuff at times. And
did you say Basquiat?
Basquiat, the painter.
What was his deal?
Look him up. He's a.
I'm not going to. I wanted you to tell me what Basquiat was.
Julian Schnabel, Broken Plates. Oh, come on. You
Francis Bacon?
What, Francis? No, I wish. No, so it's like kind of like, I'm not really into this art either. I'm not really into what this guy's laying down, and I don't buy that people are really into it, other than like, yeah, rich assholes get really into paintings and they don't even necessarily care about them, and people pretend to see things and feel them. There's that whole scene with Alec, and it's like talking about feeling the image on your eyes, and this, I don't know. That's like,
is that what people talk about?
Some people do.
Art when they don't know what art is?
Well, there's people who talk about art in a particular way. And this kind of is an example of that, in this like offhand kind of goofy way that's supposed to, I don't know. It's a comedy, so I guess they're kind of making fun of it, but maybe they're not. I don't know. This thing really overstays its welcome. I kept checking the time.
Sure.
I think there was like maybe about like, it's been a while since we did a time code thing, but this is probably around the 51-minute mark where I was like, and then like I felt like the movie had to be winding up, and I'm like, oh, it's only like an hour and 9 minutes in, and I'm like, that was a really long 20 minutes, and it just kept going, and I was like, yep, it's iPod time. It's time to check my Instagram, check the Instagram, see what's going on, and the movie just kind of winds off, and you're kind of like, oh, that's it, and then it's over with, and off with the show. So yeah,
my timestamp was 30 minutes.
Yeah.
So you lasted a lot longer than I did,
I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, I'm pretty indifferent to this one. Like I said, it's the British comedy, and it's like no one really talks about this movie. No one's going out of their way talking about it. It's not a secret. It's not a hidden gem or anything like that. So I don't know, RJ. How did this work for you? What did you think of this?
I thought this movie was just total horse shit.
Horse is shit.
Horse is shit. No, I was super bored by this. I was completely unengaged. I couldn't care less about this thing. Because I don't really like, I talk about all the time with some movies where it's like, well, who cares? But in this movie, really, who cares about this homeless, fucking pretentious artist with a foot fetish? It's like, well, who gives a shit about this guy? And it's not even that the character is uninteresting. It's like the way that they portray and represent this all of the content in this thing is uninteresting. First off, so I'm talking pretty passionately. I don't like hate this movie. I just think it's like, it's a super boring, lame movie, and it's like, I don't really care. Kind of like how you're indifferent to it. And in my opinion too, it's just like, well, I don't even really realize or know why this is here. This is a weird pick. It's not as bad as some of the Criterions that we've watched where it's like, oh yeah, I really didn't like that, but I can kind of like, there's something here where I understand why it's a Criterion film, where with this one, the whole time watching it, I was like, why is this here? Like, what relevance does this have to anything? Is there some kind of like cultural context that I don't understand, that this movie was like real important? But I doubt it. So anyways, I think the biggest thing about this movie is that it's not really like, it never felt like a real movie to me. It plays a lot like a TV special, not even a TV movie, a TV special. So like, you know, like when your favorite TV show will do like, here's your Christmas bonus. It's an hour long instead of the 20 minutes. That's what this whole movie felt like to me.
So I'm looking up Alec Guinness because I'm curious, like what his like trajectory was. So I mentioned this last week in the introducing what we'd be talking about this week. So Ronald Neame, he's like the producer of David Lean's like movies, like Great Expectations and Oliver Twist.
Mm-hmm.
So he's like one of those guys, and this is him making movies. And Alec Guinness, he got his start almost essentially with Great Expectations, and he's in Oliver Twist, Future Creep, Kind Hearts and Coronets, I think. Or no, I'm thinking of Colonel Blimp. No. I'm scratch that one. But he's like in comedies. He's in a bunch of different little movies here and there. To Paris with Love, The Prisoner looks serious. Oh yes, The Lady Killers. Everyone loves that movie, but me.
The Coen Brothers one?
Well, that's the remake of this one.
Oh.
But yeah, then it's like he doesn't really get into that sweet stride of Lawrence of Arabia and such till later. Dr. Zhivago and. Yeah. I don't know, man. I don't know why this is here.
Okay, well, let me tell you some more, okay? Let me tell you more about why this is a bad movie. So it plays out like a TV special to the point where some of the music, like, this is going to sound really weird. And I'm not saying it's Seinfeld music. I know I always say that.
You do.
But at the end of this movie, the music, I swear to you, is the same music that plays in Home Alone. At certain points in Home Alone, the exact like when he's boating away, I think that song comes on. It's very bizarre.
Man, this movie actually, yeah, Bridge on the River Kwai predates this movie.
Okay.
By a year.
Okay. So, Home Alone music, Jarrett.
Yeah.
When this movie starts, you get you're introduced by a huge exposition dump where a character comes up and literally tells the whole audience, "You're this great painter. You were in prison for the last month for making prank calls? That's bizarre. Why would you do that?
Why would I do that?
Why wouldn't I do that?" And then you see him go to the phone. "Hello, is your refrigerator running? You better catch it." And like that stuff happened, and I was like, "What the fuck is going on?" Like
maybe you couldn't hear it because you were slapping your knee so hard from laughter.
Oh, from laughing. Are we supposed to laugh too about his foot fetish?
You know what? Like I'm on the record being like I'm not a fan of people's feet.
Yeah, I was wondering how you were gonna.
It didn't even faze me. Because the presentation is just like whatever.
Well, I liked when he looked at his painting and he was like, "That's a real foot."
Yeah.
Like at the feet that he's painting, and he's like super into feet, but he is just like a weird foot fetish guy, right?
Well,
sorry, I don't mean to
his other
fetishes.
paintings aren't really into that though. It's just that particular one he's like really.
Well, he
into
does
feet.
bring up feet a lot though, because he like looks at other people's feet, and he gets that one gentleman to sit up on the couch so he can look at his feet.
Yeah,
it does come up quite a bit.
It does, but that's because he's working on a particular a work. So it's like really like the focus at that moment. But because it's like when he does the one in the church, it's like not Feet Town, right?
Not really, but
yeah. See,
so that's
and
that's
his
weird...
other paintings aren't that. It's just like that was the moment, and because people are like, "Oh man, feet, that's crazy."
Yeah, I think
see this movie like who could possibly care? That's the real question.
I think the best highlight of where the comedy doesn't work for me is when the guy spoils the money pit gag, where it's like, you know, when Tom Hanks's Money Pit, where he sinks through the floor and it's comedic gold. Everyone laughs at that. In this movie, you have the hole in the floor covered by the huge like carpet or the area rug, and you have the guy leading up to it, and you're like, he's gonna fall in that hole. It's gonna be pretty funny, but he biffs it because he intentionally trips himself and falls before he hits the hole. And I was watching it and I was like, you piece of shit. You couldn't like sell it a little bit. Like you weren't going to get hurt by just walking into it.
He's not going to bump for free.
Well, but he was getting paid for this movie.
Well, he wasn't, he was paid to act. He wasn't paid to bump. Brother.
Well, I thought that was a huge, they really got under my skin, Jared. I was just like, fuck this guy. He can't even sell that. Like be an actor, you prick. And then this movie too, I think it's just too much like, it's too much what I think people think art is. And you talked about that, and I'm the last person to say what art is because I don't know what art is. But it comes off that way where a lot of the stuff is just like, it's a metaphor, man. It's art, like we painted this wall just to bring it down, man. It's performance art. Or even something about how like the community rallies together to make this art piece is something that you could take from that on its own. Yep. But there's that. And then I found him really like annoying, where after he brings the wall down and he's on his houseboat and then the big freight boat comes, and he looks at the side of the boat and he starts sizing it up like it's a canvas. He's like, oh yeah, I could paint a real good picture on there. And it's just like, you can tell in his mind, he's like, this is what an artist does, man.
Here we go again.
Yeah, everything is art. Every landscape or like every surface is a canvas. It's like, oh God. That's why people hate people who.
God, I just heard that in my head. Every surface is a canvas, and it's just like.
Is that not what the ending means though? Because he looks at the side of a boat, man. And he's like, "Oh, I could paint that up. Every surface is a canvas for my art."
Yeah.
So I was watching like that. I was just like, ugh. I don't know. It's often I don't like movies. I don't know. I don't like hate this movie or anything. I just think it's just kind of a dumb, bad movie. Like I really don't know why it's in here.
Well, it's here.
It sure is, Jarrett. It sure is. Hey, what do you think is worse, The Horse's Mouth or How to Get Ahead in Advertising?
Oh, How to Get Ahead in Advertising like actively was annoying. I really didn't like that movie.
Is that like the bottom of your ranked list?
Of the second set of 101 to 200? Yeah, it's right there at the bottom for me. I really didn't like that.
Is it because you hate satire, Jarrett?
Yeah, I do. I hate when people say things are satirical. It pisses me off because they don't know what that means. They don't know what satire is. They don't know how it works. And then they refer to things as Swiftian, and then I just like want to self-harm.
Jarrett, maybe you just don't understand satire.
Maybe I don't.
Maybe you don't. Well, anyways, that was a productive use of our time, hey?
Yeah. It's like, I'm thinking of like, these kind of like these British flicks, these Lord of the Flies types deals.
Yeah, they're just like, the thing too is Lord of the Flies and Horse's Mouth. I don't think they're bad movies. It's just like, they're just not interesting.
Not as interesting. I mean, it's not like I dislike British cinema. There's like some amazing British movies, but there's these ones that you're just like, the reputation is earned of why people are like, oh, British movies. I don't know. Is that a thing?
Yeah. No, probably not.
Okay. Well, maybe I'll start that trend. Fuck Paddington.
Excuse me? We're not talking about Paddington, brother. We're talking, dude, about everything else. Paddington is quite good.
Yeah.
Quite good. If you get Crave, you can watch Paddington too.
Is there anything you liked in this movie?
Honestly, not really.
Wow.
I was super uninterested in this. I was just sitting there.
The lady, the one that like kind of like she's got the painting and she sold a bunch of stuff off. I think she actually does a pretty good job of like underselling like how she's like a real minx, and like cause like she's like her body language is very subtle, like super subtle, where you're like you don't even realize that she's like has any interest or is like playing against how old Jimson's like a real horn dog.
Kind of like a Jarrett Duncan.
Come on now.
You are a old horn dog.
I'm old. I feel old.
Horny.
Hey, Kip. So we're going to do two things here. We're going to talk about who hates this movie, and then we're going to talk about who loves this movie, because I'd like to know. I'd like to know what people are saying. Who's throwing down 5 stars on this motherfucker?
If anyone.
What do you want first? You want to go back and forth?
I don't really give a shit.
Okay. Okay. So the last 5-star review this movie got, Michael Lassoff. Ooh, he wrote a mouthful.
Is it hefty?
In my opinion, The Horse's Mouth is Alec Guinness's greatest acting achievement. He was at the height of his acting powers in the 1959 when it was made. The story of an eccentric, ill-mannered, but dedicated painter, Gully Jimson, who loves to paint big walls and finds his inspiration in drinking women, may sound a little cliche, but you're not aware of it as Guinness really knew how to turn on the acting magic for this one. He is funny, maddening, convincing, and entirely lovable. The screen script is the only one Guinness ever wrote, based on the original novel by Joyce Carey, using Dylan Thomas as the inspiration for Gully Jimson. There you go, old Dylan Thomas. Carey's novel was darker. The music fits as a glove to this hilarious story. I love this film and go back to it each year to laugh and be inspired.
Oh
boy.
Oh, Michael.
Michael's
a real Criterion nerd. Yep. Not a lot of 5 stars, but I think
this
some
does.
of
this one does.
The 5 stars are quite showing. The Horse's Mouth, Scarface, Peeping Tom, La Dolce Vita, and La Ventura, the creep-approved bad movie that no one likes.
So this fella's an anti-creep.
He's kind of an anti-creep. He just watched Billy Liar and gave it 4.5, which is pretty...
And there's another one.
Pretty wild. And one of his favorite movies apparently is Jean Cocteau's Orpheus, which I didn't mind. Like, I thought it was okay, but that's not a 5-star affair.
Well, there you are. Rain Barrington, an excellent screwball comedy with a hilarious performance from Alec Guinness.
Is this the other 5-star? Okay.
Yes.
His favorite films are Magnolia, Boogie Nights, Akiru, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. This person's from St. John's. Hey. They have 975-star ratings, Jarrett.
Whoa.
This person.
Okay.
They only have 2 half-stars, and it's The Room and Amazing Bulk. So they are they're a Red Letter Media fan.
Okay. Jones the Cat, The Horse's Mouth. As a kid, this was one of my favorite movies, and it still is. Wow. I was the only person in the family not gifted in visual art, and this movie inevitably brings back memories of the scent of oil paints and the texture of thick impasto. Alec Guinness has a great role in the half-mad artist Gully Jimson, whose serio-comic exploits to fulfill his visions are richly comic and occasionally poignant. He does a full chameleon, or octopus if you prefer. Here, coming off seeming older than he would 20 years later in Star Wars. That's true. And lowering his voice to a gravelly roar. This movie also gave me my first exposure to Prokofiev's great Lieutenant Quiche Sweet. I don't fucking know.
Quiche Sweet, eh?
Quiche Sweet. Also used in Woody Allen's Love and Death and sampled by Sting in Do You Think the Russians Love Their Children Too? It's as perfect as an antic accompaniment to Jimson's wanderings as it is to Allen's clowning. Interestingly, it was originally composed for the early Soviet film Quiche, of which it is easily the best part, like that Sting song. 5 out of 5.
This is an abandoned account. They only have like 7 ratings. The only 5-star rating is The Horse's Mouth.
Wow.
But there's also a 4-star rating for what we were talking about in the preamble, Inland Empire, your favorite David Lynch film.
No kidding.
What other hot gems you got over there, brother?
Well, I got some hate here, RJ.
All right, sure.
1.5 stars. Man, that's very small font. What is that? Lermontov? Yeah. So, the late 50s was a great period for Guinness with some memorable roles. Kwai, Tunes of Glory, White Suit, etc., really elevating him to one of the most versatile actors in the country. This wasn't one of his best roles. It was rather one note, and he did little with it beyond the general mien of the character. Still, it did grow on me, and there were some great lines. Add these to the ravishing transfer, and you have a film worthy of a rainy Sunday afternoon watch. That's That's a 1.5 star review.
This person's a little weird. They gave Killing of a Sacred Deer a 0.5 star. They don't have many 5 stars. They're all Criterions though. And there's lots of half-star things, but a lot of it is like really shitty horror movies that like I've never even heard of. But then there's also things like Sacred Deer and Catch Me If You Can. That's not a half-star movie. Mother, half-star. What else? Paddington 2, half-star. Okay, this is a troll. This is a professional troll. That movie is a treasure to the world.
Like the horse's mouth.
Like the horse's mouth, apparently.
So, speaking of that title, the horse's mouth, there's like the expression straight from the horse's mouth.
Yeah, what does that have to do with anything for this movie?
I don't know.
That doesn't make sense at all.
Yeah. Kyle Garvey, 2 stars. Neame, the much later Hopscotch, future Criterion Creep in like 2 months, along with master British actor Alec Guinness, Dog.
Is that it?
This is 58 Horse's Mouth is a comedy about an artist.
Oh.
A boorish artist he is, though that's redundant. No. Neame's pictures seem very, very unfunny.
What is going on here? Are you reading a review?
I am reading a review as written.
Okay. Keep going.
That's
it.
Is
that
that
it?
That's the review. Kyle Garvey.
I don't know what's up with Kyle Garvey, but so as always, I found weird trends. Kyle Garvey gave Billy Liar 5 stars. So I don't know why people who love Billy Liar hate Horse's Mouth. It's bizarre. Big Criterion fan. They just watched Fireman's Ball. They gave it 3 stars.
They're Criterion lovers.
They are Criterion lovers, but
that's the only reason to watch a lot of these movies, I think.
I think so. But at the same time, this person, Jarrett, just gave all the Air Bud spin-offs, of the puppies, half a star, which I think is like a mean thing to do. Why would you watch that movie and give it a half a star? Because they're very clearly for kids.
Finally, Bobby Analog, 2 stars. A frog-voiced Alec Guinness acts like a smarmy brat. Technicolor is wasted on dust and rain. Ronald Neame directs like he is waiting with bated breath to go on a lunch break. Snap.
Bobby Analog sounds like a porn star.
A little bit.
Bobby Analog. 4 5-star movies. Tenenbaums, Chungking, Thin Red Line, Cena. Some of their favorite movies include my most hated movie, Call Me By Your Name. They also gave Mother a half a star. A lot of these people hate Mother for some reason. This person's also hating on Adam Sandler movies. Men in Black 2, half a star. That seems unfair. Space Jam, half a star. Oh, Jarrett, they gave Wild Hogs a half a star. What is this? These are quality movies.
Yep.
Huh.
Well, RJ, got anything left to say about Horse's Ass?
I don't know why it's a movie that needs to exist in the world.
After the break, we look forward to greener pastures. And hey, maybe we can paint our mural on the side of that tanker.
Jarrett, every surface is a canvas.
Maybe we can go fishing with John.
Fuck, I would very much like that, Jarrett.